Noun, a person who is admired or idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. That's the definition of hero in the dictionary. Or using one of my dad's sayings, you can look up hero in the dictionary and you'll find my dad's picture. My name is Kenny Maggard, Jr., and I'm so thankful that God picked me to be one of Dad's 3 children. On behalf of our family, I want to express our sincere gratitude for every call, text, like on Facebook, message, and condolence that has been shared with us during this most difficult time. It is our sincere hope that we honor our dad the way he deserves today and every day for the rest of our lives. Kenneth Eugene Maggard was born July 19, 1947, to Eugene and Opal Maggard in Meridian, Mississippi. He was the third of 4 children. My Aunt Jean and my Aunt Lynn are what I would call wiser than my dad, because Dad taught me not to bring up a lady's age. Their family was made complete when Dad's younger brother Roger was born 2 years later, almost to the day. We always knew this, but Dad reminded me recently that Roger isn't just his brother, but his best friend. Dad had nicknames for a lot of people, and my dad calling him Raja was probably better than me and my siblings calling him Donut Head for the bald spot he had on the top of his head by the time us knuckleheads came around. The stories I've heard about Dad and Raja don't all belong in a church setting, but they sure had a hell of a run on this earth. Dad was born dirt poor in Meridian, Mississippi, and the family moved to Gulfport near the Wolf River when Dad was 5 or 6 years old. Papa was a hardened war veteran of America's greatest generation, working as a farmer and a carpenter, and Mama was a housewife that had her hands more than full. Dad often reminded us that they didn't have indoor plumbing until he got out of the Navy in 1970. Uncle Roger likes to remind us that Mama had no qualms with tying those boys to a tree in the front yard to discipline them for something that no doubt called for something along the lines of being tied to a tree in the front yard. Dad loved to tell stories of his childhood, like the time when Dad was really young and his favorite Uncle Charles, who was only 7 years older than Dad, rode over to Dad's house on a horse to bring him somewhere he needed to be. Or the many stories with Dad and Uncle Roger getting into trouble. There was a time Dad made a homemade spear by attaching a nail on the end of a broomstick. The problem there was Dad missed the target, and that makeshift spear stabbed Uncle Roger in the knee. "You better not tell Mother," is what my dad would say next. Another favorite story was one day Dad and Uncle Roger only had enough money to buy 1 root beer, so like good brothers, they split that root beer. By split it, I mean my dad drank the whole thing. You see, Dad's story was that his half was at the bottom of the bottle, so he had to drink the top to get to the bottom. It's a sore subject to this day, so I'd suggest you don't mention it to Uncle Roger. The Maggard family had a plow horse named Old Dan. Dad loved to tell stories about Old Dan. Old Dan would mosey his way over to the front window of the house every Saturday morning. Dad said Old Dan would stand there for 30 minutes to watch Roy Rogers through the window, and Dad figured it was because Old Dan must have liked Roy Rogers' horse Trigger. Roy Rogers went in, and Old Dan was back to grazing the family property. Another time, Dad was eating cornbread and started throwing some small pieces of the cornbread at Old Dan's rear. As a reminder, Old Dan was the plow horse for a poor family, which means Old Dan ate what he could graze on. Old Dan wasn't about to take cornbread being thrown at his butt, so he put a hoof square in the middle of my dad's forehead. Knocked my dad out cold. In fact, at 73 years old, you could still see the mark Old Dan left on my dad's forehead. My mama told me when I was a kid that they knew Dad was going to be okay because he started chewing on the cornbread that was still in his mouth when he came to. I recently came across a picture of my dad with Uncle Roger and Old Dan. It was a reminder of where my dad came from. Both boys were barefoot, had ropes for belts, and no doubt Mama made those clothes. Old Dan looked like a horse that needed some food, as all of his ribs were protruding out. I keep thinking about how proud Mama and Papa have to be of all four of their children. And I'd imagine they're telling my dad that in heaven. Dad loved his family so much and never missed an opportunity to spend time with them despite living hundreds of miles away. My dad told us stories of picking watermelons for 25 cents an hour. He drove a school bus when he was in high school. He drove a Pepsi truck after high school. Dad graduated from Harrison Central High School in 1965. He and Uncle Roger spent many days and nights cutting up with friends on that same Wolf River they grew up on. He joined the Navy in 1966. Dad always told us his primary reason for joining the Navy was because he figured he would be better off fighting in Vietnam from a Navy ship than the prospect of his little brother Roger potentially being drafted into the Army and serving on the front lines of the jungles in Vietnam. As fate would have it, Uncle Roger was drafted 2 years after Dad joined the Navy. Dad went to work and put in his request for Vietnam. If I remember correctly, Dad put in multiple requests to go to Vietnam without success. Dad's little brother, Roger, served our country in Vietnam. Dad was so proud of Uncle Roger and would light up any chance the subject came up. 13 medals for his service, including a Purple Heart and a Silver Star. The Silver Star Medal is the United States Armed Forces' third highest personal decoration and is awarded primarily for gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States. Uncle Roger, I know my dad would love for us to tell us that we are so proud of you and thank you for your service. Dad's time in the Navy was spent at naval bases in San Diego and the island of Guam. He made lifelong friends, and my siblings and I have been lucky to get to know some of them. The stories of Dad with Wayne Alford, Bobby Gully, and Carrie Possum Prados definitely do not belong in a church setting. But those boys loved each other and had each other's backs through thick and thin. I have fond memories of those 4 Navy veterans and their entire families getting together for a crawfish boil at my house in the 1990s. And I've been fortunate to make many memories with Mr. Wayne and his family on annual deer hunts in Black Hawk, Mississippi. The boys hung out at the shop on those hunting trips, which is where many lies were told, maybe a few Budweisers were emptied, and maybe not everything that was talked about there made it back to Mama. The shop is where I learned that you cut off a man's shirt tail if he shoots and misses a deer. I had the fortune of cutting off Bird Dog's shirt tail when I was 9 years old, and affectionately known at the shop as Pee-wee. Mr. Wayne got out a Sharpie, wrote, "I cut off Bird Dog's shirt tail, 1193 Pee-wee," and hung it in the shop wall to make sure old Bird Dog caught hell from every redneck that made it through the shop. Dad loved that story. Uncle Roger started joining us on those trips about 20 years ago. My nephew Cody's been gone for a long time, too. My dad was so excited when he took my nephew Hayden on his first deer hunt there. While I haven't made one in a while, I know we'll all get back there soon like my dad would want us to. An early lesson Dad taught me was that it was okay to cry, and to cry big, whether people are watching or not. The first time I remember seeing my dad cry was when Bobby Gully passed away suddenly. My dad was inconsolable. He was hurt. And it made me love him more because my hero was showing me how to be a man by his example. My mom called my dad first. They spoke on the phone a few times, and then Dad asked her on a date. You see, Mom was a 22-year-old widow with a 2-year-old son named Eddie Dwayne Fauché II. She had a close friend that was helping her grieve the loss of her husband while also moving forward with her life for herself and her young son. Mom knew of Dad because he worked with Mom's late husband, Dwayne. Dad told me earlier this year that he can remember Dwayne showing up at work to show off his pride and joy. A brand new, healthy baby boy they called Eddie. That date turned into more, which turned into Mom and Dad getting married. Dad didn't think he could have children, yet Mom and Dad would go on to have 2 more children. Angel Michelle Maggard was born on Halloween. I would later say it was because that's when the witches came out. Dad's job as operations manager for International Moorings and Marine moved the family to Ventura, California. That's where they were living when baby number 3 was on the way. Shortly after I was born, the family moved back to New Iberia, and that's where Lisa and Kenny raised their 3 children. I've heard it said that it takes a special man to raise another man's child. My dad taught us all that it takes a man to raise his children, regardless of how they became his children. He was a giant, and I was just a kid. I was always trying to do everything he did. I can still remember every lesson he taught me, growing up learning how to be like my old man. Dad's career in the mooring business brought him all over the world, including China, Russia, Egypt, Africa, Venezuela, and the Azores. I sometimes laugh at the thought of my big redneck dad walking the streets of China. While Dad was seeing the world to earn a living and support our family, that meant a lot of time away from the family. Sometimes as long as 90 days at a time. Mom picked up the slack at home and did an outstanding job playing both roles to all 3 kids. And when Dad called from overseas, it was a treat. Each of us had a chance to talk to Dad. It never failed when it was my turn to talk. My lips would quiver, and I couldn't get any words out. Hearing his voice was a reminder of how much I missed my dad, my hero. I would find out after I graduated high school how much my dad's lips were quivering on the other end of the phone when he would talk to all of us, because he missed his family so much. This is where my dad taught me to dig deep and find the strength to get the words out, especially when it hurts. I mentioned my dad had nicknames for a lot of people. That included his kids. Eddie went by Shred or Buttermilk in our house, despite Angel and I trying to make Ed Dewena stick. Angel was Angel Bange, or Bangy for short. I was mostly KJ or Little Kenny, but sometimes Dad would call me by my mom's nickname for me, Bugsy, or my sister's nickname for me, T-Can. Dad was stern. Being gone for long stretches meant that the work around the house and yard was intense when Dad was home. Projects had to get done. And while Dad was the son of a carpenter, apparently Uncle Roger got all the handy genes from Papaw, because Dad wasn't really handy, and he certainly didn't know how to fix lawn equipment. Mom cut the grass when Eddie and I were too young to handle an acre lot with a push lawnmower. That's right, an acre with a push lawnmower. Once Eddie and I came of age, the yard work was our responsibility. Neither Eddie nor I can remember a time that the weed eater worked. And none of us knew how to fix anything, so Dad taught us what a cane knife and a swing blade were. I hated doing that work at the time, but nobody said building character was fun, and my dad was building men. When it was time to replace the roof, Mom and Dad went with a light-colored metal roof. After sitting under tree canopies for years, the roof needed cleaning, and Dad rented a power washer on a Friday. He told me we're getting up early on Saturday to get after it. I was still too young for Dad to put me on the roof, so my job was to hold the fort down on the ground and do whatever Dad needed while he was up there pressure washing. I took that as try to catch a quick nap in the lawn chair. I'll never forget seeing the hose sliding off the edge of the roof, immediately followed by my dad sliding down the roof, feet first and on his belly. As he came over the edge of the roof, he grabbed the ladder, threw it into the yard, and fell just over the edge of the roof on a holly bush. As soon as my dad got up cursing and I realized he was okay, I couldn't help but hold the laughter in. I can't tell Dad's version as good as him, but it goes something like, That roof got slicker than bat poop, lost my footing, and as I was sliding down and the bolts of the roof were tearing into my skin, I told myself, just grab the ladder and gently belay myself out into the yard and stick the landing. Let's just say that's not how it worked out. I mentioned Dad was stern. I like to think it was his way of being a dad instead of being worried about being our friend. He saved that for when we grew up. There were many times where Eddie, Angel, and I were playing in our room, and we all gave each other that look. That look was because we just heard Dad's knee pop as he was coming down the hall. That look meant get your mind right and don't be doing anything you shouldn't be doing. At 37, my knees and ankles sometimes pop when I'm walking around. I think of Dad every time it happens, and I know that's something I'll never forget. Dad loved his only daughter, Angel Michelle, so much. While he was always a big, tough redneck, Dad was a teddy bear. I can still hear him tucking Angel into bed with her Care Bear. I wish I may. I wish I might. Wish my girl sweet dreams tonight. Dad introduced me to the game of golf. It really started out when I asked him if I could join his Saturday group, only because that meant I wasn't going to be cleaning the house with Mom. Dad was never a great golfer, but he enjoyed it, and I loved that first round of golf with my dad. I remember watching my first golf tournament on TV with Dad. It was the final round of the 1996 Masters. Dad was excited to watch Greg Norman win his first Masters tournament, and we both watched him fold like a cheap suit, and Nick Faldo took that green jacket from him. I was blessed with the opportunity to start volunteering for the Masters in 2015, and Dad made trips in 2015 and 2018. He was so excited when he got there that first time. He was like a little kid. He had got there on Monday, and whenever I got done working that day, I got to the rent house, and Dad was like, Kenny, do you know that Ray's Creek is across the street behind that house? He said, you want to go get a golf club and take a picture with it? I was like, Dad, wait till you're there, man. You're going to get to take a picture of the real thing on the golf course. He was so excited. Our memories at Augusta National will always be close to my heart. After we watched Dad's favorite golfer, Jack Nicklaus, the most decorated Masters champion in history, hit his one and only hole-in-one at Augusta National in 2015, Dad said, son, it don't get no better than that. Mom and Dad sat the three of us kids down after I graduated high school and let us know they were splitting up. At the time, I took it really hard. I didn't tell any of my friends my entire freshman year of college. While this was a difficult thing for us to deal with at the time, I'm so thankful that both Mom and Dad shared with me, independently of each other, that they had lunch in the last couple years and made amends and forgave each other for everything. Mom and Dad, while I know it couldn't have been easy, thank you for always spending the holidays and family gatherings together for the sake of the family. You'll have always put your self-interest aside for the family, and it's not gone unnoticed. Dad's next chapter was in Katy, Texas, which is where he worked hard and played harder. He got into the barbecue scene, and he dove hard. Next thing you know, Dad had 2 pits that he could trailer behind his truck. He loved spending time with all of his buddies at Q-Fest. Hanging out with his adult kids and their families became one of Dad's favorite things to do. He loved nothing more than driving one of those pits to Baton Rouge to barbecue for all of my friends at an LSU tailgate, or cook a gumbo in a 60-quart pot for another tailgate. He spent many Halloweens or New Year's at Angel's infamous, get the cops called every time, house parties. Every time Eddie needed a sous chef for a church event, Dad was there. Dad also got into the Texas deer hunting scene and made many wonderful trips to Pocosa Creek with his dear friend David Zapalak. Dad was so excited that he was able to share this special place with Eddie, myself, and Eddie's oldest son, Cody. Trophy bucks were bagged at Pocosa Creek, and a Pocosa Creek campfire was one of my dad's favorite places. Dad introduced me to the Zac Brown Band at that campfire in January 2010, which remains one of my favorite bands. Dad returned to the Wolf River most years around the 4th of July. There were always many family members that made it. Uncle Roger was always there. Aunt Lynn went every chance she could because she was never one to pass up a good time. My brother and sister made some trips with their kids. I haven't been in quite some time, and man, I wish I did. His river buddies always showed up. The Wolf River is Dad's place. This is where he'll find his final resting place in July. Our family always had a tradition of honking when we rolled over the Wolf River on I-10. It's going to take on a whole new meaning for us. In recent years, my dad teamed up with his friend Steve Freeman to start the Mumsy Cookers, which is a Texas-style barbecue cooking outreach ministry of Montgomery United Methodist Church. Dad was so proud of the good work that the Mumsy Cookers do, and it combined his passions of cooking and fellowship with serving people. I usually tie songs to specific memories, and I got in a habit in the last few years of texting Dad when a song reminded me of him. A few years ago, I texted him, "My Old Man" by Zac Brown Band. That same band he introduced me to. And Dad loved it. A few weeks later, in August 2017, I was getting teary-eyed hearing "That's My Job" by Conway Twitty on my way to the gym in the morning. I sent it to Dad with the words, "Heard this song this morning and wanted to tell you I love you." Can't imagine this world without you. Hope you're doing okay in the middle of this Harvey mess. Dad replied that it brought a tear to his eye, and then he let me know that he and the Mumsy Cookers were in the middle of cooking for 1,500 people for Hurricane Harvey. That's my dad, my hero. I mentioned one of my dad's sayings at the beginning of this eulogy. Anyone that has spent any time with my dad is well aware of his sayings. I'll leave you with a list of these sayings, some edited or omitted completely given that we're in a church. And I hope they make you smile as much as remembering them have helped me through the toughest of times. Hot damn. If you've ever played cards with my dad, you've heard him say, "Tennessee toddy, all legs and no body." Or paregoric, "It's hotter than a nanny goat in a pepper patch." I've been around the world 4 times, 3 county fairs, 3 goat ropings, and I ain't never seen no stuff like that. My brother, sister, and I always laughed when Dad said the real version of that saying. And we find it fitting that Dad's getting his own 3 county fairs, with a memorial service here today at Asbury, another service at Uncle Roger's, and then the spreading of his ashes at the Wolf River in July. Shaking like a dog pooping peach seeds. Put that on your hard drive. You know, son, the older I get, my check engine light keeps coming on. Grace in motion. That dog will hunt. Hot damn, Eugene. Damn it, boy. I'm going to tell both my friends I know you. My dad had his own way of teaching defensive driving, and the first time he put me behind the wheel, he says, "Son, first thing you need to know is that everybody else on the road is an idiot." And then when my dad traded in his long wheelbase Chevy pickup for a Volkswagen Passat to make all his trips to Houston, he made his first U-turn. He said, "This thing turns on a penny and gives me change." My patience is running thin. Thank you too much. And I think this afternoon we might all be able to use this one. It's raining like a cow pissing on a flat rock. And when he was with my sister and her family, and I think maybe Dad noticed a good-looking waitress that was heading over to the table, and he said, "Christmas done came early." Acorn didn't fall far from that tree. Ray Charles could see that. I can handle that. Fonk Leroy, be still my beating heart. Happy as a pig in poop. I'm gonna done told you what. They make these for fat people? That your legs, or you standing on a chicken, boy? So Dad let me know I had skinny legs before I might have realized it myself. Whew, I'm full like a tick. Let her rip, tater chip. You stepped in what? Darn tootin'. Don't tell me about the labor pains, just show me the baby. Well, that's good enough for government work. My dad's friend Steve Dennison shared on Dad's memorial page, "First time I ever met Kenny at a river party at Bell's Ferry before the bridge was built. He slid his 55 Chevy between two telephone poles, got stuck in the mud, and had to roll down a back window to crawl out. He looked at me and said, 'You can roller skate in a buffalo herd.'" In the sea of many generous and heartfelt condolences my family has received, a friend of mine lost his dad in recent years, and I know it was really hard on him. He shared these words with me that I find is helping me through the grieving process. "So sorry to hear the news. Losing a dad is not easy. I hope you can find some peace that he has completed a journey that we all must do. Thankfully, he will continue to be a fixture in your life, as you'll likely think of him every day from here on out. He'll still be right there with you. A journey that we all must do." And what a journey it was. Born dirt poor, traveled the world, raised 3 children that all looked up to him, watched all 3 of those children graduate from college and build families. Always, always, always told his children that he loved them and that he was proud of them. 11 grandchildren that he had a special relationship with each one. 1 great-grandchild, he had a special relationship with her too. And another great-grandchild on the way. Wow. Now I'm a giant. I got a son of my own. He's always trying to go everywhere I go. Do the best I can to raise him up the right way, hoping that he someday wants to be like his old man. One last saying that my dad had was to make a long story long, and I feel like that's where I find myself now. Dad, we're just beginning to tell your story. I believe when you left this earth, the Lord said to you, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." I love you, old man. You're going to live forever.